Hello, MotoGP World fans, and welcome to this latest episode of Talking MotoGP from the Indonesian round with myself, Rob Portman, and my colleague Paul Scott, once again joining me all the way from South Africa. Just a note, everyone that's joining us in the comments down the side, hello and welcome, and thank you for tuning in, and I look forward to all your comments throughout the show. But as I am the director of the show, I can see all your comments. Paul cannot see any of your comments. So if you think you're talking to Paul and he doesn't reply or say anything, don't think he's a Mr. Nasty and not replying to you. It's literally because he can't see any of the comments coming down the side. So I'm very much the director. I just want to turn this off. I'll be getting to as many of your comments as I possibly can. El Camino, how's it, Paul? Daryl Bryson III, good evening, gents. Hope everyone is well. All good and you. Thank you, Daryl. Daryl Holmes, good evening, guys. Rion Davis is joining. Justin DP. Michael Vololeslis, still got to learn how to say his name. Sean Wilders. So everyone's joining in. Thank you so much for joining us on this Tuesday evening. We are going to give it a trial run, delayed from the Sunday where I had taken it to, but Monday nights I now referee football games. So we've moved it to Tuesday night. So let's see how it goes. Charms and Tommy's tuned in. Kaz Weeks, Ruan Payne, Pazane, Byron Nietling. So everyone is tuning in. Sven Gruner, thank goodness. I always wait for Sven Gruner and Stephen Berry to join in because they are comments men. They're the men that just get to things down the side there that we can't get to throughout our conversations. Tulani, welcome. Thank you for joining us. Jeremy Dinson, Cam, CP Buertz, a lot of people joining us because we've got a lot to talk about from what was another fantastic MotoGP race weekend. Paul, MotoGP is just, with all the things that go on and the mistakes and the decisions on Dorna and that, MotoGP have got to show with the riders. When I spoke to Dave Peterson a couple of weeks ago, it's the riders that keep us coming to MotoGP. Yes, we get upset with Dorna and the decisions, but you can't drag yourself away from it. No matter what happens, these riders just keep you entertained.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, evening, everyone who's tuned in. Thanks for tuning in. Now you know why I don't answer any of the comments, because I'm blind to those. Rob, as you've just highlighted, the sport seems to just be getting better and better. Look at the crowds they're having. Indonesia, another 100,000 people. This week coming, Australia is going to be jam-packed. I think we, as diehard MotoGP fans, we've lived through the good and the bad times when the sport has been at its lowest ebb, which I don't think really ever happened. A lot of people were worried what was going to happen when Rossi retired. Yeah, there was certainly a drop-off of possible, I won't say viewership and interest, but that Rossi fever. But look what he's done with his team. So he's continued without even being there. So, yeah, I think we're living through, that old saying, the best of times, the worst of times. These could be the best of times. And next year, and we don't want to discard this year, but next year is going to be even more wow.
Yeah, I can't wait. It really just does keep us entertained. Mike Teal, hello, Mike, and grandson Liam. Always great to have you guys on the show. Nicole Brett, all the way from Cape Town, and everyone's pouring in. Brian Ritchie, all the way from Germany. Hello, Brian. And everyone from all around the world. I know we've got Portuguese fans, French fans, German fans, Austrian fans. So thank you so much for tuning in. Really do appreciate the support. Paul, heading into the weekend, and this is obviously a comment for an open conversation for everyone to have. So get your comments in. The big news, and we're not going to go on about it too much because we had a whole dedicated show to Marc Marquez and Honda and what's happening there. But the official announcement was made that Marc Marquez will be joining Gresini Ducati. It's kind of exactly what we knew was going to happen. It was the only realistic move that was going to happen there. The word is now out. Frankie Carcetti is going to be his crew chief. So that was the crew chief to Joan Mir in their 2020 championship winning season at Suzuki. He's the current crew chief to Fabio Di Giannantonio. So Marc Marquez is pretty much plugging into what the deal that Di Giannantonio had. Obviously next year will be rubbing his lips and his hands at the fact that he'll be having the championship winning bike from this year, 2023 Ducati in the 2024 season, which isn't a bad thing. I think anything from a 2022 Ducati onwards is great. So that's now official. Quickly touching upon that, there's a lot going around that it's going to be a plug and play exercise. Marc is going to climb on that bike and be competitive, and I'm certainly excited, and I think he's going to be. I'm pretty sure he's going to be competitive. But you start pulling it apart, and there's a lot that Marc needs to get through and understand. It's a new bike, it's a new package, it's a new team. He's got to now work with Frankie. He's been working with Santi for so long, and he's, it's a completely different environment for Marc to get comfortable with. So how long that's going to take, I don't know. I think he'll get comfortable pretty quickly and go fast. But having said that, it could take some time. So it's not as clear and cut that Marc's going to refine his form and be winning races as we think it is.
I think one of the things that he will be very cognizant of is the fact that he needs to take his time, because he's been through this 3 seasons of injury that have almost cost him his career. I don't think he wants to jump on that bike. Yeah, he wants to be competitive. He's going to want to be right at the front immediately. But I think he needs to just take, obviously, the 2 test days that they have before the season, and maybe a couple of races just to settle down. Because as you've highlighted, new crew chief, new crew, brand new bike. It's a massive change for any rider. Does he have the talent and the ability? We're going to find that out. I'm going to say, which I said last time we spoke, certainly he's going to be there. I said I think Barcelona, he'll win or will have won already 5 or 6 races in. But yeah, he's going to have to. And if not, he's going to be exposed. And then we'll see that the Marc Marquez of 2019 was the best that we ever saw. So are we going to see a new Marquez in 2024? I don't know. The good thing is, if you hear what Jean-Mir said about Frankie Carcetti, he will move the earth to make things work, which I think is a positive. I don't care who you are as a crew chief. When you're getting a 6 times MotoGP world champion on your bike, you're going to give it horns. You want that to be successful, because if it's not successful, yeah, Marc will be to blame, but so will Frankie to a point. But I also just want to highlight how the Gian Antonio has progressed this season. Yeah, and quite a few guys had issues this weekend, but he finished 4th. So you can't take that away from him. That is a fantastic result. So I think Carcetti's way of working, his methodology definitely works. The Gian Antonio is not in Marquez's league in terms of being a rider, but he's getting there. So I think there's big things are going to happen, and I think they're going to happen quite quickly.
A lot of people commenting on that, the same kind of sentiments as what we've just said. It might take him some time. It's a complete new atmosphere, and that Chris Shears makes a good point. I think is 2 years behind everyone, and he's trying too hard, end result fall. And this is where Marc Marquez needs to be careful, because he does, in a way, he's got a lot of catching up to do, mentally, physically, overall race pace, consistency, which the Honda hasn't been able to give him. But at the same time, Marc hasn't had himself on the bike. And Marc's got to be careful that he doesn't get caught in that trap of, I'm climbing on a Ducati, things are going to be better now. Or I've got to show, and be too cocky about himself and go out there and land up crashing the way he does on a Honda and hurt himself and hurt the whole project. So, like you said, in a way, he's got to be patient. I know he doesn't want to be patient. That's why he's made this 1-year deal with Cressini. He wants to literally plug and play. He wants to jump on a motorcycle and get back to winning or podium ways and challenging for race wins and challenging for the title. But at the same time, there's a fine line between that, getting it right and trying to go too quick too soon and not taking your time. So he's got to find that balance, because if he doesn't, as a couple of people have said on the comments here, you could find himself in the exact same position he is now, where he's crashing because he's trying too hard and he's trying to catch up time. He's trying to just, I don't need time. I don't have time to waste. I need to get going now. Instead of just saying, right, give myself at least 3 race meetings. And I'm knowing Marc Marquez, I don't think this is going to happen. But I think at some point, his manager or someone's going to have to say to him, listen, Marc, I know this is refreshing and it sounds fantastic, but we've got to play our cards right here, because if it goes horribly wrong, there's going to be a lot of people pointing at you saying, you see, I told you so.
Yeah, that's exactly how it is. I think he has the self-belief that he's as good as anyone out there. His bike's his limiting factor. Next year, we're going to find that out, and we're going to find it out very quickly. You see, the other side of the coin for Marc Marquez is he knows. That's why, and this is the talk going around, is That's why he only signed a 1-year deal. He was offered 2 years with Gresini. However, he knows that the only rider with a deal for 2025 is our boy Brad. Everyone else's contract is available. So now if he has to get results next year, and he can't wait till the last 3 races, because by then, end of the season, all the deals are done. So he's got to put his hat in the ring almost immediately. So he's got a very fine balancing point that he has to watch out for. Does he, like we say, does he go too hard? We know he's not scared of crashing, so he'll go flat out immediately. But he also can't be at the 15th round of the championship and be heading up only the list of crashes and not the championship. So it's a very double-edged sword for him. And this is where strong management and a good team environment will need to nurture that for him, because I think his mindset will be, I'm going to win. And he's going to have to just put that on hold until he settles down. It's a 22 race championship. He can't win it in week 1.
And I think he's put himself in a really good situation there by signing the 1-year deal. Andre mentions here, hi Rob and Paul, what if he doesn't blend with the team or the bike and he just cancel his contract and that? But a 1-year contract is a lot easier to see through than a 4-year contract and that. And then he will be hot property. If he gets it right, 2025, he will be the hottest property. I still have a feeling that 2025 deal is 60-70% pretty much sewn up, potentially with this KTM or MV Agusta own kind of Marc Marquez team. I think that's done. But I think it's going to be an interesting exercise, because while we're all thinking that this is going to be plug and play and he's going to go, there are a lot of factors to take in, and it's make or break for Marc. Listen, it's a make or break season for Marc Marquez. A lot of people commenting, if he goes and he gets it wrong, is that retirement? Is that, okay, maybe it wasn't Honda, maybe my time is up, maybe the injuries hit me, maybe mentally I'm not there, so and it's got to be playing on his mind. It can't be just as clear as, I'm going to climb on a Ducati and do well. So a lot for Marc Marquez to think. We're not going to go on about it too much because we have talked about it. Let's get on to Honda. Honda, I've obviously got big boots to fill now. And watching Marc Marquez again on the weekend, he crashed in the sprint, he crashed in the rain race, and I couldn't help but thinking, is this the best thing for Honda as well? I know you can't really say it's the best thing. Losing a 6-time MotoGP world champion, losing Marc Marquez can't be an easy thing, but financially it frees them up a bit. They're going to hopefully save. They've still got Joan Mir and whoever else comes in, hopefully save a little bit on the crash budget. But I think it's been a real negative exercise the last 2 years with Marc Marquez, down to Marc and to HRC. But it hasn't been a good relationship. So when I saw Marc sliding, I just thought, the time's up. Honda need a fresh new outlook. Marc needs a fresh new outlook, and this is the best thing possible. Big talk is Davide Brivio as the main man to take over the project for Honda, which I think is brilliant. And then the big name that they're talking about to replace Marc Marquez in that Repsol Honda team is Miguel Oliveira. Now, we all thought, Johan Zarco is going to be promoted. Cecchinello said, not a chance. He's contracted to LCR. And I can understand Cecchinello's frustration, because he's like, you know what? I lost Alex Rins because of you guys. You've given me Zarco now, which is okay, not a bad replacement, although Zarco's just gone downhill lately. I don't know what's happened there. But thanks for giving me a decent or an okay replacement. Now you want to take him away from me and then leave me with what? Ikalakawona or Digi or someone. So I can understand his frustrations. But Miguel Oliveira is the biggest name now. And there was a little bit of to and fro from Miguel and his team this weekend. It wasn't a good exercise for the RNF. Now, I was lucky enough to be involved with RNF last year with Darren and the way they treated Darren. To me, I've got my own comments on that. I don't think it was a brilliant way they handled Darren and the whole contract situation and kept him on a string right until the end, which it wasn't the right way to do it. Razlan gets interviewed and says, no, we've got a contract with Miguel. He's got no buyout clause. He's got no clauses, nothing, right at the end. So you're saying he's not going anywhere? No, well, anything can happen. It was like the dumbest interview I've ever heard with Razlan. And then Miguel's saying, no, I've got a contract, but I've got this little loophole that can kind of say. Now, if I look at Miguel Oliveira, he's been let down by RNF quite a few times this year. Yes, he's had good performances, but I don't think the team's been able to give him the package that he wants. I think that Aprilia is there, but I said it last year with Darren. It's a it's not a Premier League team. It's a, you know, it's not scraping the barrel. I don't want to disrespect them like that, but you know, it's not the mighty power that is Honda. Even though Honda is where it is, it's not the mighty Honda with the best, with Santi Hernandez and the best crew, the 6-time MotoGP World Championship winning team. You know, that Miguel Oliveira is going to think about. Probably 3-4 times the salary he's getting at RNF, and you're a factory Repsol Honda rider. So while it seems cut and dry, like don't leave a good, stable, steady Aprilia for a dodgy Honda, it's not that clear cut. I think it's going to happen. I think Miguel Oliveira is going to be lured in the same kind of contract situation. Contracts are clearly there to be broken. I think money talks. I think Miguel will make the move. Whether I think he's the best option for what's available, I don't think he's a project leader, and I mean this with the most respect ever, because Miguel Oliveira has been nothing but brilliant to me. I'm a huge fan. He's been brilliant to my family. I absolutely love the way he goes about his racing and that, and he's been through some tough times and he's lifted himself. I don't know, just as Maverick Vinales is, I don't know if he's mentally strong enough every single race meeting to deal with the pressure that will come with a Repsol Honda ride, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, it's a very difficult one. Me personally, if the deal does go ahead, and I tend to agree with you, I'm going to say we're kind of at a 85% it's going to be Oliveira on the bike. And I'm just going to mention with Rins had that buyout clause that said as long as he got offered a full factory ride, because he wasn't on a full factory bike at LCR, maybe Oliveira's got something similar. We won't know. But I'm going to go with you and say I agree. Me personally, I'll be very disappointed. I'm not the biggest Zarco fan. I also agree with you. He seems to have, since they announced he's leaving, he seems to have fallen off the wagon. But me personally, I would have rather have seen him on the Repsol bike, because he was the first to jump, and I understand why. Cecchinello's put the deal together. He obviously dangled the carrot, gave all the pros and cons, and got Zarco to sign when Zarco could have stayed at Pramac. So I think that it would be unfair to move him, but maybe Zarco has a bit of a say and he will feel aggrieved. I don't know. Oliveira, I agree with you. He's not a championship winning rider. Exactly the same, neither is Zarco. So Honda are not going to win the championship with either of those. Will Jean Mir be able to move the bike forward? I don't believe so. I think they need something completely different. I actually think LCR might do well to move Zarco to the factory Honda team and put the Gian Antonio in there. He's impressed me. The last few rides, for someone who knew he was getting booted off that bike, and he knew a while ago, I think he's just shown that he's there to race, and he's committed. Is he better than Oliveira at the moment? Results will tell you no, he's not. But sometimes the newer kid on the block has a little bit more to offer, a little bit more enthusiasm, and he's fairly experienced. Fairly. I don't think Iker Lecuona is the right guy. He's raced it a few times. He hasn't got great results. He hasn't got the experience. Honda need one experienced rider, possibly even two. So if they do put in Oliveira or Zarco with Jean Mir, hopefully the two of them can work together and head in the right direction. But as we've discussed, Rob, this is I'm going to say another 2-year project for Honda at best. But what I think there are lots of people listening to our show in the MotoGP paddock, because we spoke about Davide Brivio how long ago? That's been bandied around. A lot of what we've said, and I'm joking now, but a lot of what we've said is suddenly becoming a possibility. And I mean, we're just talking because we're passionate and we read and we see what's going on. But as I say, this Honda thing is, and Yamaha, don't throw Yamaha out of the window. They're in the same predicament. They might be one step better. But saying that, Honda have won a race this year, Yamaha haven't. So, you know, they need to move things up a bit. Who's going to fit on that Repsol Honda? I have absolutely no idea. If it is Oliveira, it's not going to make much of a difference. Because, and we've highlighted this before, when you look at Marc Marquez, yes, and he's crashed way too much, but he's consistently been half a second or better than the next Honda. Now, if he happens to finish a race and take a race like Sunday that was 26 laps long, he probably could have finished 20 seconds ahead of, I think, Rins was the second Honda. You know, and that's the predicament Honda are in. They get rid of him. Yeah, I agree with you. The move needs to happen. But then next best rider, I mean, once again, Jean Mir doesn't finish. You know, he's finished 3 races this whole season. that's not really, that's blighting his copybook quite badly too. So maybe Oliveira, who's a little bit more consistent, maybe he'll string 3 races together, 4 races. I don't know. Time will tell, but definitely whatever the issues are at Honda, they're going to need a minor miracle to sort it out in the next 2 seasons. And there's nothing they can do this year. There's absolutely nothing.
Yeah, I look at Miguel Oliveira, and he's a Lorenzo kind of rider. He's very smooth on a bike and carries smooth, fast flowing lines, and likes to be smooth and comfortable on a bike. And the Repsol Honda's not going to give him that. Whether you can turn the Repsol into that kind of bike, I don't know. I understand that he's in terms of him, DJ Antonio and Zarco, Miguel's a lot more marketable. He's a lot more prestigious in many ways. Certainly in Portugal, he's the president, and he comes with big value, big sponsors. So I understand from a marketing point of view that Oliveira is the best way to go from market value. So I love Miguel Oliveira, and I don't want to knock him down, but I could see him going in there and being broken by Repsol Honda, as like the article you've just put together for us in our latest. A lot of riders, including Joan Mir, have now gone there and been broken, and I just think Oliveira could be another one to that list.
But then what are Honda going to do? Because if this is the pattern, they're going to run out of people to ride the bike, So where do they make the change? If they try Oliveira, it doesn't matter whether it's Oliveira, Zarco, De Gea, and Antonio. They're getting on a bike right now that nobody can put good results together on. Marc can jump behind one of the Ducatis for a couple of laps, string a very good lap together, and then he'll tell you in the interview he was on the limit. He was, riding as hard as he could. And then when it comes to the races, yes, he got a podium a couple of weeks back in the sprint race, but the races, he's also not, if he is finishing, he's finishing 6th, 7th, 8th. But more often than not, they're all throwing it down the road. Then you look at Nakagami, who, and I have the greatest respect for him. He's superbly fast and talented. But in that field, he's a back marker. And have a look at him. He doesn't crash, but he doesn't finish in the points. He finished in the points on Sunday because half the field didn't finish. So, it's such a difficult predicament. So now you're going to get a guy like Oliveira, and he's going to have to ride it. And we know, Rob, at that level, if you're riding at 98%, you ain't going to get there. And he's going to have to slow himself down so he doesn't crash all the time. Because he's also not a guy who likes to crash. So it's such a predicament. And, I don't know what the answer is. And even bringing in a Davide Brivio, it's going to take a while for any changes to filter through. They're restricted in what they can do. They got to homologate most of what they do by the end of the Sepang test, which is middle of or end of February. Then you kind of have to have your whole package done. You're allowed minor tweaks throughout the year. It's just not enough. So certainly at best, it's another 2 years before we see a competitive bike out of Honda.
Yeah, Honda are looking like they're going to get the concessions, which will help. We speak about Yamaha. They've at least made a move with Alex Rins, who I think is going to bring a lot to the project and take them forward. They've got Fabio, who's there and willing to work if Yamaha just supply them the goods. So in many ways, Yamaha are in a lot better position compared to Honda. Yakudas says, despite having a later spec Ducati, Ducati are going to give Marc Marquez 100% support in the Gresini team. Just to finish on that, I think they have to. I think Ducati have to, because if it's seen that Ducati aren't supporting Marc, that'll just blow up in Ducati's face. So finishing on that, Johan van Deventer makes a very good point, and I did hear it come out. Alicia Spargo potentially looking at a move from Aprilia to that Repsol Honda seat. And at first I was like, nah, the captain of Aprilia, why would he want to do that in this part of his career? Why would he want to do that? He's comfortable. But then I looked at it. You look at Aleix Espargaro's career. He's been Suzuki. He's been Pramac Ducati. He's been Aprilia. He's been around the paddock. And maybe he would look at this and go, you know what? Why not end off my career as a factory Repsol Honda rider? I'm going to end my career. I could do another year with Aprilia next year. It's not going to get any better, to be honest. No disrespect to Aleix, but not going to get any better than this year. Last year was probably the best Aleix Espargaro season that we will see. There'll be a couple of podiums and race wins and stuff thrown in here and there, but Aleix is a good, solid he certainly has mentally come on leaps and bounds over the last couple of years, turned himself into a real MotoGP stalwart. That, if it were between Oliveira and Aleix, I would go the Aleix route all day long, because of the experience that he brings. He's certainly taken the Aprilia project, and looking at it, that could be the deal. If Aleix, Miguel, and Honda are around the table, they say, right, Miguel, what do you want to? Will you come? Yes, 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 yes. Aleix, will you come? Yes, yes, yes. So if Aleix were to go, Miguel would obviously be promoted to the factory Aprilia team. So I don't. It seems cut and dry that Miguel Oliveira is going to be the new Repsol Honda rider, but I could seriously see Aleix just doing a last minute switcheroo and say, you know what, why not? I've got nothing to lose. Let me go finish my career off in full factory Repsol Honda colors, which to any Spanish rider is the holy grail.
Well, I think to any rider, most riders would want to be on the Repsol factory team. However, does Aleix speak to Pole? Because if he goes to Pole and says, listen, yes, I've got this deal on the table, what do you think? I think his brother will just shoot him there and then. However, I do agree with you. Look what he's done with this Aprilia project. He's stuck with them, and it's certainly that bike, like the KTM, has improved in leaps and bounds compared to where it was 4 seasons ago. So is that due to him? It must be, because when things don't go his way, he's very good at throwing his toys out the cot. So I think they've got a lot of respect for him, and he clearly seems to know what direction, whether it's wrong or right, they've stuck to that direction. And more often than not, we're seeing last season and this season that Aprilia has come on in leaps and bounds. So possibly that's not a bad call, whether it's conjecture or journalists selling space in magazines and newspapers that they're speculating. At the moment, we don't know. The talk around Oliveira is definitely a lot more serious. It's been recognized by Razlan, by HRC, that they are talking to him. Oliveira even said, yeah, HRC have phoned. So certainly, but as we say, Aleix could be not a bad bet, but that would need to be a long-term thing. Honda, I think they need to wrap their heads around the fact that there is no quick fix, or it doesn't seem like there's a quick fix. So do what you can for next season with an Aleix or whoever it is, but make sure that 2025 is the season where you now start expecting better results, because the bike is a better package.
I think the main focus for Honda moving on from it is they cannot rely on Jean Mir. So they have to make a big signing, whether it's Miguel, whether it's Aleix, whether it's DJ Antonio, whoever it is, they've got to make a big signing, because they cannot rely on Jean Mir. Jean Mir proved even in his Suzuki days. Yes, he climbed on the Suzuki and won in 2020. It was a very confusing championship with everything happening. He was the most consistent. The Suzuki was the most consistent on the Michelin tires. But it was a package that Alex Rins had a hand at, Maverick Vinales had a hand at, Aleix Espargaro had a hand at. So it was a nice developed package which Jean Mir just got on. And we always said any rider coming from Moto2 into MotoGP, the Yamaha and the Suzuki was the package to be on back then. And Jean Mir made it work. Since then, he didn't really improve the Suzuki package, going forward. So, I don't think he's the guy, and he's proved it this year. You're not going to, and this is where Marc Marquez is getting it wrong. You're not going to develop a bike with it lying in the gravel after 2 laps in a main race. You need laps. You need laps to gain data, no matter where you are. If you're finishing 15th, it's data. Lying in the gravel is not going to help you at all. Having said that, it's a lot easier saying that from the sideline, saying don't crash. At that level, as you said, even when you're pushing 98%, it's not enough. They're on the absolute limit on every single lap. So it's a lot easier to say. Just catching up with some of the comments on the side here. A lot of people talking about Aleix Espargaro being mentioned. I don't think Oliveira has what it takes to sit on a top 3 on a Honda. That's SJ Auctions talking about that. I don't think his riding style is suited to the Honda. Wayne Taylor talking about that same kind of move there. A couple of people talking about DJ Antonio. Before I get there, Andrew Nickel, Zarco's ride height device got stuck this Sunday, hence the poor performance. Thanks for that, Andrew. And another reason I actually wanted to rewind back to when we were talking about Zarco's lack of performances lately since the announcement came out. And it has been. He has been very disappointing, considering he's on a Ducati and a factory one at that. It hasn't been a great exercise. But, Zarco can't be the only one to blame here. Ducati seem to do this with riders in all kinds of world championships. As soon as they kind of switch off. And I'm not saying they're not fully invested anymore. I am kind of saying they're not fully invested anymore. But Ducati seem to do this. Cool. You're not a Ducati rider anymore. You're going to get no updates. You're going to get no more attention. So kind of sit in the corner there. Here's your bike. What changes do you want to make? So I think a lot less effort goes into it, and it's clearly there for all to see with Zarco. So to say it's completely down to Zarco is a little bit. I don't want to say disrespectful, but I think it's both ways coming there. DJ Antonio, Paul, and I know you mentioned DJ Young, and I've been very impressed with DJ Antonio. Eduardo Simos, hi guys. Miguel Oliveira, thumbs up. Eduardo, I agree with you. Miguel Oliveira is a fantastic rider. My biggest worry is with the HRC project is him going there and ruining Miguel Oliveira. I would like to see him stay at Aprilia, RNF offer him a better package, get into the factory Aprilia team, and for Oliveira to be in a proper team that's working to showcase himself. And I just worry if he makes that move to Repsol Honda now or next season, it's going to really halt his progress for the next, as you say, Paul, for the next 2 or 3 years. Any Honda rider can't expect to be winning races or getting podiums because of where the project is. So that's my only concern with Miguel. It's not that I again, as a lot of people say, I think it is riding style. I don't think mentally he's ready for it. Oliveira made the move from KTM to Aprilia to go into a more stable, more consistent package. Okay, yes, it was maybe bad timing, but to be going to Repsol in many ways is a big step back, even though it's Repsol and it's HRC and that. So please, Miguel Oliveira fans, don't think as we're saying that Miguel's not good enough. It's not that. I don't want to see the same thing happen to Miguel as it did with Paul, Lorenzo, and all those other guys that have failed in Repsol Honda. Digi, Paul, you were saying he's good enough, and I have been very impressed with his results lately. But what irritates me with a performance like that from Digi on the weekend, where he's sitting there fourth, brilliant, and he said, now I've got to prove to people what I'm made of and stuff. And this is the difference between the Brads, the Marks, the Pecos, and those real top elite guys, is that they are able to have that mentality every single race weekend. And a Digi should be having that mentality every single race weekend. So don't, now that you're kind of in the shop window, now all of a sudden Digi goes, right, now I need to perform. No, you need to do that week in, week out. And that is why you get the mentally strong Digi just as fast as a Brad or anyone else. What puts the Brad in them there is mentally believing it and enforcing it every single race weekend. And some riders like Digi, they can't activate it every race weekend. And that's my only concern when it comes with Digi, is that mental side. You've got to bring it out, especially if Repsol Honda. There's no off weekends. There's no off weekends. In the second rider in the Gresini Ducati team, it's an off weekend. It's okay. Bastianini was winning, great. Alex, Digi, well done. You finished 10th, 11th. No. When the spotlight's on you, you perform every single weekend. So he needs to get that mindset that he had this weekend and bring that into every single race weekend. And then I would go, right, he's worthy enough to be a MotoGP or a full factory Honda rider.
I don't believe he's right for the full factory Honda. I think he's right to go to LCR. We know the technicalities with Cecchinello and the deal with Zarco, but in my opinion, I would have put Zarco in the Repsol team. I would have announced it already or tried to do the deal already, and then move a guy like the Gian Antonio. He's young. I think he's hungry. What you're saying mentally, 100%. Off the top of my head, I think he only ever won one Moto2 race. He's had one pole position. Fourth is his best in MotoGP. He's consistently been the last of the 8 Ducatis in the field. So yes, I hear exactly what you're saying, but we seem to be in a talent pool where we're lacking that, whatever it is, to put someone on a Honda and say, listen, besides Pedro Acosta, who KTM have tied up, who Honda should have thrown everything at for a future world champion, not next year, but that ship has sailed. So I think that Gian Antonio could be good. Mentally, I agree with what you're saying. He certainly has the speed at times, but as I'm going to reiterate, Honda are at a point now where what do they do?
Mm.
So I don't know. I don't know if DG doesn't get the ride. I don't think we'll see him in MotoGP again. Whether he goes to Moto2 World Superbikes, time will tell. Does he deserve the ride on whether it's LCR or Repsol? And I think we can discard it being Repsol almost 100%. Yeah, it's a difficult one. I'm just thinking for Honda's sake. You got a guy like Nakagami who he's consistently there, but he's never there. He's always top, 10 to 20th. The Gian Antonio might learn from him, might improve from that, might be exactly the same. So, very difficult one for anybody. I'd like to see the Gian Antonio stay in the championship. I think there's potential. Look at Raul Fernandez. First year, not so great. This year, a little bit better. He's definitely improved. Maybe not in the leaps and bounds that his talent should have had him, but because I do believe he's a better rider than Gian Antonio. I don't know. I really don't know. It's a big dilemma, and if he's not in MotoGP, as you've said, he'll only have himself to blame because you can't bring it to the race 1 out of 6, 1 out of 8. For him, it's 1 out of that was the 16th race of the year, and it was his best result. So the difficult one to overcome. But me personally, I just like the guy. I see a bit of an enthusiasm in him that you're not seeing in the Zarcos and the Oliveras. From a personality point of view, he just seems like that kind of guy, but that could just be his personality.
Pedro Lopez says, love to see people not understanding how good Miguel is. Sooner or later, you'll see. And Pedro, I reiterate, Miguel's had a very unlucky season. He's been let down by other riders, taking him out. He's been let down by injuries. He's been let down in many ways, as I said, by RNF, the team, and Aprilia. What Miguel needs is a bit of consistency, and jumping ship to Honda is just going to set him back. That is my concern. I know Miguel, we all know the speed and the talent that there is with Miguel to take that step backwards. And I know it's so hard saying that with Repsol Honda, but it is, as you said, it's going to be 2-3 year project. And is he willing to do that in his career? He's also getting close to 30 now. There's a lot to think. It's so easy to get clouded by it. It's a Repsol Honda contract, a lot of money. Marc Marquez gave up between 12 and 25 million, whichever way you read it, to get out of there. I mean, that is a huge statement in itself. So, yeah, anyway, it's crazy.
Rob, I'd just like to reiterate for everyone watching, we understand the talent pool in MotoGP is, you cannot describe it. The only one who could describe it is Brad Binder because he's there. These are the best 22 or 24, however many happen to be on the grid due to injuries or no injuries, the best motorcycle road racers in the world, bar none. There's no one that you can pull from the US, the British superbikes, Australian superbikes, and say, oh, well, we'll slot you in. There's no one better than these guys. So when we say we don't think Oliveira is going to cut it, or we're not, no disrespect to them, we're comparing them to a talent pool of a Pecco Bagnaia, George Martin, Bezzecchi, Marc Marquez, guys who have proven week in and week out that they can handle the pressure, they've got the speed, and they'll do whatever it takes. A la Brad Binder on Sunday, they will do whatever it takes. Get out the way, Luca Marini, I'm coming through. And we're not discrediting or discounting their talent. They are the best of the best. But in that pool, you're swimming with some really big fish. And if you, like we've said many times, and it doesn't have to be 1% off your game, you're in 20th place or 18th place. And that's the point I want to make. We don't diss any of these guys or undermine their exceptional talent. But in that pool, you got to be on your game week in and week out just to be in the top 5 or 6.
Absolutely. Stiggy Wiggy makes a very good point. Miguel's also got to take into consideration there is this cloud that surrounds RNF of if they're going to be in the championship, finance, sponsors, and everything. So from a comfort point of view, Miguel's looking at this going, Repsol Honda, you're getting paid triple the money and you're sorted. They're not going anywhere. So again, there's just so much to take in there. So, we'll leave it at that. Sticky Wiki also says, the Honda has looked a bit better the last couple of races. Brad and other people have battled to pass. They have, but in the hands of Marc Marquez. And this is the problem. Marc put in 2 or 3 good race weekends, India and that. And then, a race weekend where he's on the deck in the sprint and on the deck in the main. So there's massive inconsistency, and only Marc's able to either get it right or get it wrong. So that's a massive talking point. There's a massive talking point there that's going to go on forever and ever and ever. A couple of people saying, bring some riders in from Moto2 maybe as a fresh approach. The problem is I don't think there's any Moto2 riders. A couple of people saying Japanese youngsters. There's none that will come. Tony Arbolino, when he was mentioned going to MotoGP, I was like, I don't, other than Pedro Acosta, I don't see anyone that is good enough, again, with utmost respect, good enough to get into that crop of MotoGP riders at the moment. I can't see the Dixons. I say that. I think Dixon is a better big bike rider, if you know what I mean, compared to a Moto2. I think he could do okay, Dixon, but he's not going to be challenging the Brads, and he's not going to be any better than the Digis and those guys there. And Digi's just finally broken into the top 5 in fourth, his second year in trying, So Moto2, I don't think is the answer. Their answer, Repsol Honda's answer is Miguel Oliveira. Whether they like it or not, unfortunately, that's the scenario they find themselves in. Whether they like him or not, that is their option from a marketing point of view, from a talent point of view, from a listen, this guy wants to talk to us point of view. Let's not forget that Honda have probably contacted Brads and everyone else, and they've all gone, no, it's cool, thank you, I'm fine where I am. So it's not as easy as we all think, that Honda's just got this pool of riders to choose from. No, it's not that easy. So that conversation is going to go on for a long time with Honda and where they need to go. I think what we can take from it is it's going to be a 2-3 year process minimum for Honda to get that right. Paul, big week. I cannot believe what happened this weekend in MotoGP. Jorge Martin, credit to the guy again. The guy just, he's just so arrogant and so confident, but it's this, he just pulls it off, and he just goes out in that sprint race and destroys everyone, and he just does everything right. But this is where the difference between the Pecco in a factory Ducati and a Martin who hasn't won a MotoGP world title. Yes, he won a Moto3 world title, and a Pramac team that hasn't won a MotoGP world title. This is where the difference is between them. When Martin lined up on the grid on Sunday with a soft front tire, now again, I'm not the most technically gifted person, when it comes to tires and the mechanics of a bike. But when I hear Pierre Taramasso from Michelin say, the track's abrasive, it's a new surface, it's this, it puts a lot of pressure on the front tire, this and that, we've recommended everyone to go with a hard front and a medium rear. And when a Martin rocks up with a soft front, okay, I know Elation, them also went softs, but when a championship contender rocks up with a soft front and medium rear, I looked at that and I went, geez, that's taking the confidence maybe a little bit. And this is what confidence does. It can sometimes put that smoke screen up where you're untouchable. And Pecco was in that frame of mind for a while. Fabio Quartararo was in that frame of mind for a while. Rossi they've all been there where you just, no matter what I do, I cannot be stopped. And I think Martin and Pramac got caught out on Sunday with that, because in that situation where and I know what their game plan was, put a soft front on, you're going to be at the front, the tire is going to maintain its temperature because no one else is in front of you. But judging from what happened on the Friday and the Saturday with front end tucks and such an inconclusive new surface and only one racing line, and Michelin saying, do not, go hard front, and your biggest championship rival goes hard front, I think Martin in a way maybe let himself down, or whoever made that decision. If Martin said to the team, I'm going soft front, I don't care what you say, that's where Pramac got to say, listen, we're leading the championship now. We took advantage of Pecco last weekend and now this weekend in the sprint race. Let's not cock this up. Let's not risk this at all. Let's go with a safe bet and go medium. Go soft front. Yeah. When I was waiting for him to crash, that whole race, I was waiting for Jorge Martin to crash. And I know that sounds like I know what I'm talking about, but I swear on my family that I was sitting there going, it's a matter of time before this guy crashed. It has to be. Elation never started dropping back on the softs. And I was like, this guy's got to go. You load that front so much and it's corners where you're on the brake while you're at an angle. that front's going to give way. And true, that's when he went down. I went,
There you
this is the difference between factory Ducati and a Pecco who have done it, to Pramac and Jorge who are, I don't want to say pretenders because they ride in the mix still, but just lack that little bit of experience.
Well, definitely. And I think the nerves got to him because he had qualified sixth. He's used to qualifying first, but definitely front row. So suddenly he's in sixth. He needs to get to the front, or his start was unbelievable. He just rocketed past everyone. It was as if he had a turbo on his bike. But anyway, he wasn't expecting that. I think he thought, if I get into third, I've got the soft front, 3-4 laps I can give it stick to get to the front, and then I can control the race. Now he gets the whole shot. He bombs 3 seconds into them in, what was it, the first 6 or 7 laps. And then what he should have done was backed it off. Quarter of a second. And then if someone closed the gap, just pick it up for a lap and then close it. And he didn't. He says he was doing exactly the same thing that he did for the first 6 laps. Well, there's your answer. He should have just backed it off. So I think exactly what you're saying. I think a little bit of inexperience, but I think the pressure got to him. And there was no need. He was very fortunate that, or Pecco was very fortunate that he had a good start, and then he had a fantastic race, and we won't take anything away from him. When the chips were down, Pecco delivered. But Martin had it in the bag. All he had to do was back off a fraction, and he would have been good. Exactly what you say, Rob. How many people lost the front end? I think it was that turn 11. You just saw bikes. Every session, every race, just losing the front off there. And he should have known that. Quite rightly so. The team should have said to him, let's just leave here. And if we lose 4 or 5 points to Pecco because Pecco beats you in the race, so be it. But he lost 25 points, the worst result he could have had, the absolute worst. And when he crashed and they showed him standing against the barrier with his head, he knew exactly there was only one person to blame for that. But let's give credit to Pecco Bagnaia when he was under pressure. Very fortuitous, but he had a fantastic start and he worked his way past riders quickly, which we haven't seen him do in the past. He generally takes a while to pass guys. Got into third, got into second, saw when Maverick was having problems, bombed Maverick, and away he went. One of the articles I read said, Pecco didn't win the race, Martin lost the race. Now, I'm going to disagree. I think Pecco, he won that race because he grabbed it by the scruff of the neck from the start. When Martin threw it away, yes, I understand he crashed all on his own, but I'm going to say, and Pecco's not my favorite rider in the championship, but the maturity he showed, he could have been very dejected after his sprint race. He wasn't thrilled, you could see that, but he certainly, a very mature head prevailed on Sunday, and the opportunity presented itself, and where he normally makes mistakes, he made 0 mistakes. Bided his time, got to the front and controlled the race. And I mean, the last lap and a half, when Maverick and Quartararo were coming at him, what had he slowed down? Were they catching him? I don't know, but he had done more than enough to know that he was going to win that race. So all credit to him. That was the ride of a world champion.
It was, and it just shows you. Sven Grinner comments here, as Martin said, he's gone 14 races without a mistake. It was bound to come, but pressure of leading the championship, as the comments come in, pressure of leading the championship and the expectation of pulling out the lead even more might have caused him to make the slight mistake. And it was evident how the pressure of leading a world championship can affect you. And it came out to play perfectly this weekend. Pecco went into it very cautiously, thinking about it, everything. And Martin was the man. Martin didn't have anything. Martin just, I'm going to go do my thing. And you could see it from the first session. Pecco was flustered. He was not getting that track right. He was not getting set up right. When he runs wide, you can see the actions. He didn't make it into Q. It was there for everyone to see that. Yes, they say, no, I don't feel the pressure of the championship. Of course, no one's going to go stand behind the microphone and say, yes, I'm feeling the pressure of the championship. Yeah. But it shows, actions speak louder than words. And it showed. Pecco just looked like a lost man up until Sunday. He really did. He wasn't getting set up. The whole team, you looked at Davide Tordozzi and they just looked on edge. It was such a tense environment. And obviously, it's like anything, that the tension from the rider feeds to the mechanics. It feeds. It's like a virus. It just spreads. Pecco loses the championship lead on Saturday after the sprint race. What happens on Sunday? We see a completely different Pecco Bagnaia come out, saying on Saturday, I need to be more aggressive at the start, which he was. I need to do the difference between the Friday and the Saturday Pecco to the Sunday Pecco. It was like worlds apart. It was like, a guy that's never won a championship before, or even competed for a championship before, to right, you're the champion. And it was spectacular to see. I really was so impressed by Pecco, because it was testing conditions on the track, not an easy place to pass, as we saw with Brad, and we'll talk about that now. But he made it work. And it wasn't all down to Ducati power that he made it work. He made it work with racecraft and race strategy and championship winning experience. And I don't have the problem with the Jorge Martin pushing and crashing. He's young. He goes all out. I love that about some riders, where they go all out. I'm more upset with Pramac, because Pramac should be saying, Jorge, I know you want to go the soft front. I know you do, but you can make the medium work. Even if you go out in the medium and the hard and you don't feel as comfortable and you finish third.
Yeah,
exactly. On the deck. So this is where Pramac now need to come in and say, Jorge, I know you don't think, I know you're saying that it's up to Pecco to win the championship more than you, and it is, but we really want to win this, and we can win this. So let's not play it safe. Well, it is playing it safe, but it's not playing it safe. It's being smart. It's playing it smart. Yes, we know you can go and put a soft down and probably win the race by 10 seconds. We know you've got the pace. We know Wayne Taylor, I think, yes, Wayne Taylor said, Jorge lacks experience, but he is the alien at the moment. He's able to run qualifying lap times. He's spectacular, Jorge Martin. He really is. And this is where the team need to control that spectacular. The team need to grab him and say, we know you're spectacular, but use it in this way. And they should have insisted you go at least with a medium front. Michelin are telling us, all the other riders are pretty much telling us that. Let's just go that route. So, yes, all fingers are pointed at Martin in this situation. But for me, I think that it need to be pointed at Pramac a little bit more. But having said that, listen, the championship is still wide open. Martin, if anything, has proved that he's not a one-hit wonder. He's going to go to Phillip Island this weekend, and I have no doubt from FP1 be probably topping the time sessions. I'm so excited for Phillip Island, Paul, because World Superbikes, MotoGP, whatever, even if your bike is at half a second off, Phillip Island just brings everyone together. It's a rider's circuit more than a bike circuit. So the rider can get more out of the bike, and I think it's going to be phenomenal. But anyway, that's where it is with Martin and Pecco. In a way, I'm happy it happened, because when I was seeing Martin, even though I knew he was going to crash, but when I saw him up front, I thought, Jesus, this is just going to do this the rest of the season, and this championship is going to become very boring. I mean, it's game on now. It's very much Martin versus Pecco. I know Bezzecchi did a phenomenal job to be in there despite the injury. Hats off to him and Marini for the heroic efforts that they put in this weekend. But it's very much a two-way fight now, I think, for that championship.
Yeah, most certainly. As good as Bezzecchi is, and as you say, what a courageous weekend he had. He's too far behind, unless both Martin and Pecco have serious injuries that don't allow them to ride, that they miss 2 or 3 events. Remember, we've only got 5 races, 5 weekends left. So I think that Pramac should have managed the whole expectation after Saturday a little bit differently. You're quite right in saying that. The fact that I think it was Sven who said that it's his first crash in 14 races, very valid point. Pecco's had probably 4 in the last 14 races, so very valid point. I can clearly remember Marc Marquez at Kota, I think it was 2018, 3 or 4 second lead up the road, lost the front end, so it does happen. Let's give these guys credit that they're not perfect, they're going to make mistakes, but quite rightly so. Pramac should be saying, or should have said to him Sunday morning, even if Pecco wins and you come second, you'll still lead the championship. You might lose 5 points, 6 points, and it should never have happened. But now, as we said, worst case, he lost 25. 18 points now he's behind, which 5 races ago was nothing. He was 60 points behind. But suddenly now Pecco's going to have a different mindset because he's back in front. He's now going to ride every weekend like he did on Sunday. So now it's I think it's moved the pressure where all the pressure was on Paco before this weekend. I think we've now seen it reverse and go back to George. George is the inexperienced guy. He's I'm going to beat you no matter what guy. We've discussed this. So I think it's going to be really, really exciting and challenging for those two, because Bezecchi's going to get better. His injury is going to get better. Bastianini surprised me back for the first time, and he looked solid. So yeah, I think, and Phillip Island, well, every racer, doesn't matter who you are, speak to all of them. What's your favorite track? It's either Mugello or Phillip Island. And I think because it's such a fast flowing track, that's why we see such good racing, because it's not tight corner, first or second gear, slow into the turn, depends on your grip. Here we see the bikes carrying lots of speed. So it's the guy with the biggest kahunas who's prepared to put it on the line, and the racing from Moto3 to MotoGP is normally out that top draw. So, I mean, this is probably the highlight of the MotoGP calendar is Phillip Island. Hopefully no rain.
Yeah, hopefully no rain. Talking Phillip Island is gonna be spectacular. Paul, let's finally address the giant elephant, not only in the room but in the world at the moment, and it is Brad Binder at Indonesia with his special livery Go Boca helmet. Now, he certainly got motivation from that helmet because he rugby tackled quite a few. I think he thought he was Ibn Etzebeth or someone. Right, I'm gonna give my 2 cents. I know a lot of people are giving their comments down the side here, and guys, please let them come in. And remember, this is all just opinion and conversation. Nothing set in stone. It's all just different comments. It's just the way we all see it. So Saturday. And Daryl, I agree with you. Brad's problem in the last few races is that he gets his great starts, and he does seem to be taking a little bit more of a cautious approach into turn 1, which I think he does need to do, because I think they all need to do, because getting through turn 1 at all the races these days is almost a trophy in itself. So I do agree that what's happening there is these riders are having to think about things a lot more. They already have so much on their plate to think about, and now they're going into turn 1 rather than right in an attack mode and let's go and I'm ready to race. Now they're going into turn 1 going, right, nobody hit me, oh geez, on my brakes up to 10. So that does add even more pressure to them. But let me talk about how I saw the Brad incidents this weekend. First of all, the one with Aleix Espargaro on Saturday. On the inside of Brad, unfortunately, this track, there was one line, and it showed the whole weekend. Aleix a little bit on the inside where there wasn't as much rubber down, a little bit too much front brake, maybe a little bit too early. Down he goes, takes Brad out. For me, complete racing incident. At no stage did I find myself shouting, saying, "Oh, Aleix, what about?" I was very upset that Aleix had taken Brad out because I thought Brad was going to have a fantastic race. But at no point did I think it was a penalty. I then sat and you kind of analyze things and you go, right, that should never be a penalty. It's a racing incident. It's happened to everyone. Brad did it to Miguel Oliveira back at Jerez years ago, where he T-boned him in turn 1, he crashed. And these things happen. Sometimes they go for you, sometimes they go against you. So racing incident, damn it. But there is the argument that Race Direction have set a precedent and set a standard of that move warranting a penalty. And that is where my argument comes in. Okay, so there's loads of examples. There's Fabio and Aleix at Assen. There's loads of examples of that exact situation where the riders got a penalty for that exact move that Aleix Espargaro did, whether we think it's racing or not. Then I have a little bit of a question mark saying, well, should he have got a penalty then? If that's the precedent, if that's the way you wanted to go, Race Direction, then you've got to be consistent. And this is the same thing we've argued about so many times. Consistency. They're just not consistent. They don't come out and explain things. Why? It came out afterwards, and Simon Crayford mentioned that Aleix didn't get a penalty because he crashed with Brad. Well, I don't care. Race Direction have made it a point that if you cause an incident that ruins someone else's race, you get a penalty. Aleix Espargaro ruined Brad Binder's race. Penalty, yes. I don't think it's right. It's racing. I don't want to see penalties. But Race Direction, from what you've told us and what you've enforced, that should be a penalty. So that's my kind of case on that. Then Brad on Sunday. with the Marina incident. Brad came out and said, got a head shake, grabbed the front brake, no brake, had to pump it, and unfortunately T-boned Marini. Completely Brad's fault. I agree. Long lap penalty. Good decision. Brad takes his penalty. The next one with Oliveira was obviously a little bit more desperate, a little bit more urgency from Brad. Miguel was suffering with tires. Brad could see that, got a little bit grip, saw a gap, probably in a corner where you shouldn't kind of make that move. Anyway, again, a racing incident worthy of a penalty. I would say so, judging on what race direction have set out for the year. Again, to me, shouldn't be there shouldn't be penalties. It should be, oh well, Luca, just like you did the race before, where you took everyone out. This time you got taken out. Is it karma? I don't know, but these things happen. It's racing, leave it. So Brad, and he said himself, deserving of the two penalties, and he took them on the chin. And still a brilliant ride from Brad to finish 5th or 6th or wherever he did. Fantastic. But I was upset because there was going to be a good race weekend there for Brad. If I looked at him on Friday and Saturday in qualifying, and there was going to be such a good race weekend, and it all kind of unfolded, and it seems to have unfolded a little bit, crumbled a little bit the last couple of races. Now, whether that's Brad pushing too hard to try and make things happen, or this more kind of overthinking Brad that's happening, there definitely needs to be a take one step back kind of approach now, I think, from Brad and KTM. Just calm things down a bit. We know we've got the pace. We know that we're fantastic. Let's just calm things down, get back to basics a little bit, and do what we do best. And I think Phillip Island is the perfect platform to do that. Brad loves the track. I think the KTM is going to work well there. He said it's fast-flowing corners. The KTM is certainly a lot more agile than it's been in the past, which is going to work wonders here at Phillip Island. So what those two moves, not necessarily the first one, because the first one was a brake, a brake issue, but certainly the second one, there's this urgency, there's this frustration that's coming out of Brad that I think he just needs to kind of do what we said Darren needs to do. Just bring it back down to earth a bit and just let it happen a bit easier, a little bit. And that's easy saying, sitting here again. I know the KTM still has its struggles to it, that you still got to push that package harder than the Aprilia and the Ducati boys have to. And that's, those cracks have just shown in the last couple of races. So Paul, give me your thoughts on the Brad incidents and the Brad in whole.
Yeah, so first of all, I agree with almost everything you've said, Rob, except for the Aleix thing. Aleix should have got a penalty. It was a racing incident. I'm quite happy with that. Now they're saying, no, but he had actually fallen and he was off the bike when the bike hit Brad. That's semantics. He caused the crash. It took Brad out. It ruined his race. In exactly what you said. In other examples, people have been penalized for that. He should have got a long lap penalty at the worst. Anyway, he didn't. So that's neither here nor there. Going back to Brad in the starts, exactly what you said, Rob. He seems to have suddenly become cautious. Whether it's because he got such a fright with the incidents with Pecco at Barcelona, that can play on your mind. He, Simoncelli, God rest his soul, he got killed in an incident very similar to that, where he fell and he got hit by a bike, plus many other riders. So possibly there's that little man in the back of Brad's head that has now said, listen, you managed to avoid could have been a fatal incident. So now he's a little bit more cautious. I don't know if that's part of the reason. The Luca Marini thing, yes, we know what happened there. He got head shake, the pads opened, went for the brakes. There was not enough there, and he skittled Marini. Well, like you say, karma, racing incident, but the precedent for other people has been set, so he got penalized. Then he jumped back in, I think he was in 8th or 9th. Oliveira was steadily working his way backwards. And Brad, if you watched, which I know you did, he tried to put 6, 7, 8 passes on Oliveira. He just couldn't get it because it was so one line. So I think we saw a side to Brad, which we don't often see, but he was just showing them, boys, don't mess with me. You're getting in the way now. Out the way, please. So I think he kind of did it as he had nothing to lose. He was kind of just so tired of, make a pass, try make a pass, lose 2/10, close in 3 or 4 corners, be back on Oliver. He just couldn't put the pass. So I think it was a bit of a argy-bargy thing. Definitely too aggressive from Brad, but he needed to make a point. And I think Oliveira knew at one stage Oliveira was fourth. Now we were racing then, I think, for seventh or eighth. He was steadily working his way back. And I know they're there to race, and I don't expect Oliveira to give up the place. But after Brad had shown him the front wheel for the 15th time, surely he could have just given Brad a bit of space. He didn't have to let him pass. But I think he chopped the corner a little bit. Yes, Brad also went at a point where no one else was passing, and it didn't end well for Oliveira. But I think Brad had just got to a point where he did. He thought, well, Eben, I'm all for you this evening in the game. You sit on my shoulder and help me here. And it was a hard move. It wasn't anything untoward, but he was just giving Oliveira a little bit of move out the way, please, because here I come. So unfortunately for him that there was the contact and he got the long lap, which he certainly, it doesn't faze him. He just does what he has to do, gets back on the racetrack and races to the end of the race. So all credit to Brad, but he definitely, like you say, maybe if he just has a little bit of a reset and he had settled down a little bit, I don't think he would have finished better than fifth. But remember, Bezecchi passed him on the last lap. So if he didn't have the long lap penalty, he probably would have got the fifth, maybe even beaten De Gea and Antonio. We don't know. But I think he does need a bit of a reset. His starts have not been what they were. Beginning of the season, he was the best guy on the grid. As long as he was on the front two rows, he could get to second, third, fourth comfortably. Now suddenly he's not making up any places. So I don't know if it's got anything to do with that Barcelona incident, but certainly I agree with you. He needs to just chill and get back to the old Brad Binder where he was so focused, he was so meticulous, he was so accurate at what he did. Yeah, sideways into the turns, but pin perfect at the apex where he needed to be. And I think he needs to I think we'll see a different Brad at Phillip Island because it will certainly suit his riding. And I agree with you, the KTM. But just saying that Jack impressed me on Saturday shows how good the bike actually is becoming. Jack on Sunday, same story, worked his way steadily backwards. But Saturday, he actually impressed me. He looked good. Maybe that also goes down to a fitness thing, that for half a race distance, he's actually great. Then he's struggling, whether it's fatigue or mental fatigue, I don't know. But I must say, and Jack, he hasn't had a great last 5 or 6 meetings, but on Saturday, he certainly impressed me with the way he rode.
Yeah, just talking about the Brad thing, and I've seen a couple of riders just go a little bit more cautiously into turn one. And from my years of racing, you always had those couple of hard races on the grid with you that you always kind of knew there could be a moment of this guy coming. And I remember a couple of times going into some of the tracks where you would go into a tight first, turn one, and thinking, I in the last couple of years of my racing in South Africa, we had Carrick Flock, who was a very hard racer and had a couple of bumping and barge. I think everyone at top level in South Africa had bumping and barging with Carrick. And knowing that he was behind you, you always broke and you kind of cringed waiting. And I think with everything that's happened in MotoGP over this year, certainly, and so many turn one incidences and others, there might be a little bit of uneasiness that have crept into a lot of their minds going, what?
Sure.
Who do I trust you? I can't, you're bracing yourself for impact because everyone is on such a high level now. And Dave Peterson also said it perfectly. Everyone's got the launch devices. So everyone's kind of launching into turn one at the same time now. Whereas before, you always had the guy that could launch better than the others. Everyone's launching into that turn one at the same time now. So you can understand why there would be this little bit of a more cautious approach. But again, having said that, I love Daryl Bryson III. It's comment, Brad has turned into Dive Bomb Darren, and Darren has turned into Thinking Racing Brad.
True. Yeah, very good.
And Sven makes a good point as well. They've switched now to this carbon fiber frame. They're still kind of learning a lot about it. Could it be that they still need more development again on the carbon frame? So some fine tuning, and good to be coming out swinging next year. And that's very much, from a couple of rounds ago where they brought from the Indian round, pretty much. They knew the championship was a little bit, out of their reach. It still, Brad and KTM will never, ever give up on anything. But you know what? Right. Let's spend the rest of the season developing this carbon frame, ready to attack for 2024. The start of 24, we're rocking up to Sepang now to try and start development on this carbon. They're pretty much starting their development now, which I think is a very good way. And, things have changed. The bike must be handling in different ways and different characteristics that Brad's still getting used to. Tulani says, yeah, I think Brad is not used to the bike being this good, and he's used to forcing the bike to do things. Hope he relaxes and rides the bike more. And Tulani makes a very good point there. Up until now, Brad's had to wrestle that bike, and maybe with the bike being a little bit more agile, things coming a little bit easier, and he's still kind of force feeding it, kind of positive, negative thing going on. So the positive thing is that the KTM is progressing. Brad's progressing with the KTM. Jack's coming along for that progression. Pedro Costa's coming into that setup next year. He's going to bring a lot to it. Yes, he's inexperienced in MotoGP terms, but he's going to bring fresh approaches. And, just like Jack did this year, ride the KTM this way and it'll work. Pedro could come in there and, Jesus, we didn't know that the KTM could ride like that. So a lot of positives for Brad and KTM going forward. The carbon chassis is going to work wonders in many ways at Phillip Island. Having said that, it gets very windy there. It's fast, stability. Carbon chassis could maybe lack a little bit of stability in the faster areas. We don't know. But either way, I think it's very much development for the rest of this year. And 2024 is right. It's go time. We want to start that Sepang test in February with, other than testing the new engine, which I know is coming, chassis wise, we are sorted. We are sorted. Plug that engine in and let's make the engine work.
Yeah, and I think going to Phillip Island, they're going to have the carbon and the conventional chassis available, because exactly that, the conditions are going to be quite a limiting or a factor to be taken into account. I certainly think that Brad's consolidated fourth place in the championship, bar an injury. I think he's about 40 points behind Bezzecchi, and he's about 40 ahead of Aleix currently. So the chances of him catching either of them are quite slim. Not to say he won't, of catching Bezzecchi or Aleix catching Brad. I can't see that happening. So he's going to race as hard as he can. But I think you're right, Rob. Let's develop this bike we've got race meetings to do it at, not test sessions. We can actually try things in the races. And I think that could be their mindset. Obviously, they still want Brad. Top 3 is going to be their end goal for this season. But I think it might be slightly out of reach, especially that Bezzecchi, being injured, put in good rides over this past weekend. But I think that's not a bad thing for them to be thinking. Think now 2024. They haven't given up on this season. They're going to run it as hard as they can. But maybe there should just be a slight focus change to say, let's concentrate on what we're going to deliver next year, because they're not going to win the championship. That's a given. I don't think there's enough points, even if Brad won every race, because he's got to fight against Pecco and against George Martin. It's not like he only would have to catch up points on one rider. So I think that could be a solution to their problem, or a change of focus. Whether that's going to happen or not, you need to speak to your friend James Dent, because I know he's in constant contact with Tex. And maybe we get an opinion there. They'll tell James what's going on, and let's see, is that their thinking? If they give us any inside scoop info, I don't know. But I certainly would be looking that way if I was KTM and saying, consolidate. We don't want you to now drop down to 5th or 6th in the championship, but let's see, why don't we try this? Why don't we try that? How about this? I think that would be very wise thinking on their behalf.
Yeah, I think the mentality is very much that. Good comment here from Courtney, soon to be Courtney Binder in a month and a half time. So Courtney, good luck, and hope all the wedding planning is going well for that. And well done on your idea of the Go Boca helmet for Brad in Indonesia. Brilliant effort I know the concept was done up by Courtney, and then Lisa Esmond, and I can't remember the company's name. Check out our Facebook page where we posted the picture, courtesy of Bjorn Esmond and them, where it was a South African company that kind of did the design. And anyway, it was a brilliant kind of effort to get that all done. So well done, Courtney, and everyone.
And just to interject there, Rob, I'm sure everybody saw Rassie Erasmus posted a comment on that, eh? So that's fantastic. That just shows, the minor sports are following MotoGP too, eh? So it's fantastic to see.
And Brad certainly was the 33rd player with that game, winning by that fine margin. And definitely some inspiration there by BB33. But Courtney says the starts might be because of penalties. Think the riders are so nervous when they will or won't get one. And this is that's exactly what I'm getting to. I think Brad and a lot of riders are going into that turn one going, please just make it through, because there's so much on the line. Not only, for the race, but in the championship, there's millions and millions being poured into race development. There's so much on these guys' shoulders that when they go into that turn one, it's not just about them. It's not just about them. It's about their sponsors, the manufacturer. They've got so many responsibilities, and I take my hat off to these guys on the pressure that they deal with, how much they have to think of in a race. It's not just how fast I can go for 20 seconds. It's ride height device, activate, deactivate, launch, activate, deactivate, map, carbon brakes, getting up to temperature, managing front tire. It's madness. All those buttons. It's absolutely madness how, these guys are the most physically fit riders in the entire world. But how mentally strong they've got to be, especially in the conditions they have been at India and now in Indonesia again. I mean,
extreme
conditions. So you know what, these guys, they've always had my respect, and they always will. But in terms of when you say earning your keep and earning your money, the boys have done it. More. They've gone above and beyond in the last couple of races. There's no doubt about that.
And then, Rob, also in the start, besides the guy who's on pole position, every other guy wants to get to the first corner ahead of him. Mm-hmm. So it's the easiest time to make up a lot of places. Yeah, you can make up places during the race, but unless two guys run wide and you get a scoop of passing two in one corner, generally you pass in one rider. Where in the start, you have a blindingly good start, a la Bastianini, run up the inside and pass three rows of riders. Okay, the fact that he couldn't stop when he got into the turn is a different issue. So now you've got a guy who's thinking, cheapers, is Bastianini going to come from behind 50 k's an hour faster than everyone? And that split second of hesitation means three guys are up the inside. So you can't afford to lose that concentration. But exactly what you're saying, you can't be the guy, so the intensity of pressure for that, what it must be from the start to I'm going to say the first 2 or 3 corners, probably the first 45 seconds of the race, you're probably under the most intense pressure from everywhere, because you're trying to pass the guy in front of you if you're not in the lead, and the rest of the field, whoever's behind you, every one of those guys is trying to pass you, and you're not allowed to touch anyone, and you're not allowed to bump, and their wings that protrude. So it's such a pressure cooker of a situation. And like Dave said on the show, with the launch devices, in the old days, it was how you dealt with your throttle and clutch. And if you got it wrong, you got it wrong. Now it's almost, wind the throttle, let the engine management do the rest. As long as you set it up correctly, you're going to get there, besides George Martin, at about the same time. So, yes, it must be exceptionally stressful. Rather than, I think it's much easier watching it on TV.
Listen, it's a lot easier watching it on TV and talking about it here and pretending you know everything. It's a lot easier.
And we still get sweaty palms.
Yeah,
those poor guys.
You know what? I sit there and I fall off my couch about 10 times, because every time a guy tucks the front end, I tuck and I blix him off my couch. I can't watch with my kids because I'll end up clapping them on the head by accident. I've got to watch MotoGP by myself because I'm so reactive. I'm like the guy that kicks and hits, and it's crazy. I should actually just record myself one day. It'll be one of those America's Funniest Home Video kind of clips. But another guy I was impressed with, Fabio Quartararo. Yamaha looked good, and why I say I was impressed with him, because Frankie Morbidelli wasn't really anywhere, but Fabio impressed me. Mentally came back after the tough season he has. We all know where the Yamaha is, but it looked like a fresh Fabio. He was fist pumping his team again and looked like a Fabio that had reset in many ways. But after the Sunday race, Fabio's got to sit there and go, and he said this time and time again, I've got the pace. I can't pass these guys. He sat behind a fading Maverick, where Pecco just could pass a Maverick, where other riders can just pass. That poor Fabio on that Yamaha has just got to hope and pray. It took him a couple of laps to pass a fading Alicia Spargo, because he would pass him and then Alicia would pass him back. So the problem very much for Yamaha is, great result. Lucky that they didn't get caught up in a bad qualifying and have a bad first couple of laps. He kind of got himself to the front near the beginning, and that set up his race. But if they're going to be qualifying 10th, 11th, or find themselves in 10th, 11th on the first, second, that's it. It's game over. You can't make the moves. And Sunday's race proved that again. I think he probably had more pace than Maverick and Pecco if he had been able to get past them. But look, I think Pecco was managing it at the front in many ways. But Fabio and the Yamaha's biggest problem at the moment is if we get stuck behind a Ducati or an Aprilia or even in KTM, we got no chance in hell in getting past those guys.
But when you look at their top speed, they're not a million miles behind. Now they may be 5 or 6 kilometers an hour behind, which I understand that. But when you're in the draft, that's negated. So is it a tire problem because now he's in the draft all the time? Is it a issue that he's not aggressive enough to overtake? I agree with you. He had a fantastic ride, and when you watch him ride, I never liked Lorenzo as a rider, but I loved watching him because he was so smooth. And Fabio is very similar. This weekend, Phillip Island, I think we're going to see a great result from him because it's fast, it's flowing, it's exactly what the Yamaha likes. So I think we're going to see a good result from him, but exactly what you say, he needs to qualify well, and that's kind of been their limiting factor this season, stringing together a good qualifying session. But going back to Sunday's race, I don't know if it's a speed thing. Look, that track was very difficult. You couldn't run. You could see on the TV when they showed the overhead shot from the helicopter, the black racing line. It was, even a blind person would have seen it. It was so blatant. So a little bit difficult to find a different way. Whether he just wasn't aggressive enough, I'm not too sure. Do you think it's a top speed thing? Yamaha they're not a million miles behind. I could understand if it was a Mugello or Kota or somewhere where we're seeing those, or Austin, where we've seen those Austria, 350k an hour. Look, this was fast, but didn't seem a million miles off. So I don't know, what do you think his issue was?
So if I look at all the onboards and from the races that I've been to this year, listening to the debriefs and all the information that we get, and this is why you said, like, I think the Hondas and the Yamahas are going to be a lot more competitive at Phillip Island because it's not this coming out of these slow first, second gear turns that you've got to accelerate. And even when I've stood on the side of the track, even last year, they battle to come out of the corners. They battle to hook up the rear tire and carry that momentum. The Ducati is by far the best at that. The Ducati is the best in terms of braking stability, that initial hard braking. If you look at Martin and Pecco, other than Brad, that initial hard braking, they're the best. The difference is where Brad goes sideways and goes, got to wait for the bike to settle and then put it in. The Ducati goes boom, boom, settled and in. That Ducati settles itself so fast. That's why Danny Pedrosa's come up with these things that he thinks there's a device there that's keeping that Ducati rear tire down, because the way that Ducati goes boom, boom, and then corrects itself is extraordinary. Whereas the KTM goes, boom, sideways, and it's like a slower process to correct itself. And that loads the front, and, there's a process to it. And then from there, the Ducati as well gets in, and then you get on the gas, and there's none of this traction control holding the power back. It's all released in this beautiful symphony of speed. It just goes, and you watch it on the side of the track, and it's visible, and you just see those things launch. And if I watch on board, Fabio, he's losing a little bit under braking stability. The Yamaha does seem to not. It seems to be this little head shake before he grabs the brake, so he's not fully committed on the front end as the Ducatis and the KTMs are. But then when they get in, even with Marc, as soon as they crack that gas, there seems to be this hesitation, whether it's engine or electronics. And speaking to a lot of the guys, it's a good combination of both. There's this hesitation, and it's very much Japanese mentality of, cautious. It's kind of what's coming across. Cautious electronics, cautious delivery. So that it's hesitation, and then it gets going. Once it gets going, then the top speed and everything is there. It's that initial getting out of the turns, and that's why at Phillip Island there's not as much of that. Fabio is going to be able to carry that corner speed and not get into the bottom end, the bottom end of the revs, the bottom gears. Yes, there's the Honda hairpin or the Jack Miller hairpin that it's called now, one or two of those corners, but it's fast flowing majority of the time. And that is going to play into their hands, especially now with this more confident Fabio that's got these good results and this good race weekend behind him. It's there. And I think it's going to be a great week. As I said at the top of the show, Phillip Island, the beauty of it is it's a rider's track. No matter what, you look at World Superbikes. I was watching World Superbikes, the highlights from 2019 where Bautista was, or 2020, where Bautista and Haslam was on Honda. And Haslam, has always been able to go well at Phillip Island. But then as the season goes on, he kind of fades. So Phillip Island just brings everyone together. And I think it's going to be a fantastic weekend. The interesting thing is going to see how Pecco and how Martin come into the weekend. Is Martin going to be that? And I think it is going to be FP1. I'm going to go every lap. I'm just going to go as fast as I can. That seems to be Martin's approach. I'm going as fast as I can on every lap. Whereas Pecco, even before Indonesia, the last couple of FP1s, Pecco's had this, right, let's build up. Let's take our time and build up. The problem is he doesn't have the luxury of doing that anymore, because as he saw this weekend, yes, he got away with it on Sunday, but you can't be not getting into Q1. It just cannot happen. You will lose this World Championship if you are not in another Q1 after this. You've got to qualify minimum first 2 rows, because Martin's going to, and Martin's going to win a sprint race. It's just going to happen. So Pecco's got to make sure, right, I can sacrifice the sprint, okay, but Sunday main race, I've got to do what I did in Indonesia. Get myself in that mindset. I've got to be attacked because Martin's in attack. I have to be in attack mode, because if I'm not, Martin's there and he's just going to destroy me. So, Jesus, it's all to play for. I cannot wait. Phillip Island, just, you've got to wake up early. It's a tough one, because you've got to get up early. And even Indonesia this weekend, like a battle, but Phillip Island, you're like up before your alarm even goes off, and you're like, right, let's do this, So, it's gonna be fantastic. It's gonna be fantastic.
I think what Pecco needs to do is exactly what you're saying. Free practice Friday morning, he needs to hit it. What we've seen the last few races, he, like you say, worked his way into it. They often show him, like you say, grabbing the brakes, the back of the bike being a bit unsettled, but he's always the least unsettled. This weekend, he's going to have to grab that free practice one and give it horns, because like you say, Georgie's going to do like he does every weekend. And we know it's Jorge Martin, but Georgie's easier for us South Africans. He's going to give it stick from the minute he jumps on that track. He's going to try and break all the lap records, set the fastest times, and put the fear of God into Pecco that how can this guy go so fast? I think that's going to be his mindset. I agree with you. I think they're going to have a hard time beating him. Sprint race almost a given. But because it's such a great rider's circuit, it's going to negate a little bit of that Ducati advantage and lean towards Brad, definitely. Aleix, I'm not too sure. I think Maverick's going to do well. He likes the circuit too. He's got a beautiful style. Whether he's aggressive enough at the beginning of the race, we'll have to see. But I think Martin, Pecco, Brad Binder, Marc Marquez till he crashes, loves that place. Got a good record there, fast and flowing. The Honda's not going to be lagging out of the corners like the Yamaha. Quartararo is going to be there. It's going to be... So this qualifying session to get into P2 is going to be deadly. You're going to have to actually have no time to fiddle around, and I think we're going to see Mark chasing every Ducati that goes out, and George Martin's going to set the benchmark. There's absolutely no doubt. And I'm talking weather-wise, we're hoping for a sunny day. If it's not a sunny day, this is a track where Oliveira will shine. Because whenever it's rained, if you think of Sachsenring, some of the tracks where Mandalika last year when it rained, he was superb. If it rains, a fast-flowing track, I think and Jack could be very good in the rain. But certainly the front four in our championship are going to be the guys to beat. There's no doubt. With a few surprises thrown in, I definitely think Quartararo, as long as he gets through into Q2, whether he has to do it through Q1 or not, because, I mean, we've only got 10 spaces in Q2, and we've got probably 16 guys good enough to get through. So 6 of them ain't going to make it. I think it's going to be the most pressurized session to get into Q2 for this year, because everyone knows you've got to have a good start, got to be on the first row, at worst the first 2 rows, and from there, boy, this race just goes. And have a look at the results from Phillip Island. More often than not, at the end of the race, there's 4 or 5 racing for the win. It's very seldom it's a one-horse race. Yeah, since Casey Stone has been out of the equation, he was someone special there. But even Mark in his heyday, very seldom was he 3 seconds up the road, So, I mean, think of the races with Iannone, Marquez, Rossi, Pedrosa, and now we've got the front 4 or 5 in our championship this year, definitely going to be there with Quartararo. And so I think, it's going to be absolutely the race to watch.
And it's all going to be about tyre management in that, because while Phillip Island it's a fast-flowing circuit. It does, especially how fast the guys are going down with the aero and the downforce, putting all that pressure on the tyres. Phillip Island, we know, was resurfaced not so long ago, and there has been delaminating tyres in the past and stuff. So that's going to come into play. There's no doubt about it. And this is where the curveball is going to be thrown up for a Martin in that. I know you're comfortable on softs, but we've got to think, lasting the race and. So I think it's and this is where I worry about Jack a little bit. The occasion maybe getting a little bit.
Yeah.
I have no doubt he can qualify well and potentially be on pole position, as Wayne Taylor says. Yeah, his money's on Jack Miller. In that race, you're going to have to kind of bring those emotions in and say, right, I've got to do this for 20 or 30 laps or whatever it's going to be. You think what those tires and the speed that those tires are going at for that 26 laps, they will burn like this. So it's going to be the not necessarily the fastest, but the smartest man that brings it home at Phillip Island now. And that's where I think Pecco's got the advantage. Certainly where I think a Brad Binder will have the advantage.
Rob, just think back to last year, how good Bezzecchi was in the last third of a race. So also someone who certainly has the brain to, when he is required, look, he's carrying a severe injury. I don't think he'll be too much better. And Phillip Island, because it's so fast, it's very physically demanding. So how that plays out, the weather will certainly be a way cooler. So that could benefit him. But Bezzecchi, to me, is such a talent, and he knows exactly what he needs to do. He's had bad luck this year, no doubt, but I think he's one to watch for this weekend. On Wayne Taylor's point, I'm not convinced about Jack. I'll go for Jack Miller if the weather's wet. If it's a dry race, I can't see him making the top 5, top 6 even.
SJ Auctions makes a good comment here. And just remember, Martin had a 3-second lead when he crashed now. How does that impact Martin going forward now if he finds himself in that situation again? Does the thought process change now of Martin going, right, got a 3-second lead here. Do I keep punishing it like I want to and like I would? Or do I now maintain races a little bit more? Because I think he is going to find himself in that situation. Someone commented here, I think it was Christopher Robertson. Phillip Island, I give to Martin. Thailand can go either way. Malaysia to Pecco. Qatar, probably Pecco, and Valencia to Martin. So if you just go on those results as Christopher's put them out there, I mean, that pretty much leaves the championship at like 1 or 2 points.
Yeah, correct.
Either way, it's incredible to think how the championship's going to end up.
But we're dealing with human beings here. And if you look at their personalities, no doubt, Pecco's a little bit more reserved. He's I'm going to say a more thinking guy. I don't know him from a bar or so, but that's how he comes across. George comes across as that little bit more extravagant, outgoing, maybe brash is the right word. And they ride according to that. So I'm going to say Martin's going to do what Martin's done the whole season. If he gets in front, he's going to go win it or bin it. As Sven said, 14 races, no crash. He's now he only has to do 10 races, no crash, and he's world champion. So I think he's going to go flat out. Pecco's going to be a little bit more circumspect. When he needs to push, a la last Sunday when he needed to get, he thought into second or third, ended up winning. He's going to do that. But if he's not comfortable, I think he's going to say, look, George might crash, so I'll take a third. But I think Martin, as we've discussed in the past, as much as the team can say what they want, do what they want, he's going to ride. He's very much like a Marc Marquez and a Rossi of the old days. Maybe less so Rossi. Rossi was very good at managing a race. But Marquez certainly, when he was out in front in the heydays, he wanted to beat you. Mick Doohan always said, win by the slowest time. Marc Marquez has never felt that, and I don't think George Martin thinks like that. They want to inflict the most pain on second place because mentally it does them the world of good.
But when you were talking about Martin, we were both kind of smiling about how and that's the beauty of Martin. I've said it time and time again. I'm not a guy that would go buy a Martin shirt or cap, but you do get a smile on your face when you think about how the guy approaches his racing. He's just entertainment. He's flat out pure entertainment. When you watch him and the way he goes as fast as he does and those starts that he makes and some of the passes that he's pure Hollywood and he's a great addition to this championship. And I think the guy's like 24, 25 years old. I
Yeah,
mean, we've still
yeah,
got another
yeah,
potential 10, 11 years of him, Fabio, Bezzecchi, Marini, Brad. Oh man, MotoGP is going to be fantastic.
yeah, yeah.
And I don't want to disrespect him by trying to say his surname here. Con has just slapped us all in the face by saying rain is forecast for Sunday at Phillip Island. Con, why would you do that to us? Why
Yeah,
would
but
you do
that could be 11 o'clock Sunday night.
Yeah, let's hope it is. But thanks for the information and thanks for the head up. You always kind of expect it at Phillip Island. You kind of
Yeah,
wait for the clouds to open. But what it does is it does bring in that, is it wet? Is it dry? Is it going to be a flag to flag? And so there's always these big question marks that surround Phillip Island, and it's going to be exciting nevertheless. So I can't wait for it. A big thank you to everyone that's tuned in. If you haven't hit the like button, please do. If you haven't hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel, if you're watching off there, please hit the subscribe channel and just like and share this video as far and wide as possible. A big shout out to Darren Binder for the weekend, even though I don't think it was a result. It's never the result that he wants, not winning or finishing certainly outside the top 10. But more valuable laps, more valuable championship points heading into Phillip Island. And remember, Paul, a couple of rounds ago, we said, just get those laps in, get those results, and Phillip Island's the one that you can maybe risk a little bit more. And let's hope we see it this weekend. Darren, I think is going to do fantastically well this weekend, and I want to see him just push the envelope now a little bit more. Take the reserve button off and just dive bomb Daz come out for an appearance this weekend.
Yeah, most certainly. And he's done exactly what we suggested, not to say that he needs to listen to us, but just clock the laps. And he's consistent. I mean, he qualified 20th, finished 13th. It's not the result he would have wanted. It's not the result we would have wanted, but it's a good result. He didn't end up in a kitty litter. He's stringing, like we said a few weeks ago, string 4 good races together, which he's now done. Now Phillip Island, hang it out. And if he happens to win it, well, so be it. But maybe he gets a top 5, top 6. I just want to highlight, if anyone didn't watch Moto3 from the weekend, guys, that racing is insane. I don't know what the end was. I think there were 12 of them covered by 1 second. It was, just watch it. It's fantastic. And I know we don't have a vested interest in a Darren Binder or a Brad or a South African there, but pick a number out the hat. Choose a guy. Because on this lap, he might be 15th, and the next lap, he might be leading. It's just, I just think it is such good racing.
You know what? I watched that Moto3, and I think, in 5 years' time, the Martins and them have got big problems coming with some of those riders coming. But what frustrated me was that Daniel Halgado, Tech 3, I think, must have given him such a flat hand after that race, because how to throw away and a championship. And again, this is where you use the word experience. And he's 17 or 18, so he's a youngster. So in many ways, you can forgive him. But goodness me, how to just cock up your whole race.
He should have been leading this championship by probably 30 points. This is about the 3rd time he's done that. But what absolute fantastic racing. And it just shows there is a necessity for these restricted formulas. I call it that, where the weight of the rider and the bike have to have this, you've got a minimum. They restricted in horsepower, size counts, racecraft is the eventual winner. And, like some of them throw it out the window and some of them try and stick. But I just find it is so entertaining. As I say, if you haven't got a vested interest, just pick anyone and say, okay, well, I'm going to watch Jean Mamassia. I'm going to watch whoever it is and see how your rider does. But, oh man, these guys, they are learning such racecraft. No wonder the crop of MotoGP riders at the moment are so good, because they've come through the system, and you blink and you lose 5 places. Yeah, I just think it's superb to watch.
Yeah, it's a fantastic formula and it's working. I know Christopher says maybe look at changing it to 450s and that making them a bit bigger to close that gap on the big bikes, and that is an argument for another day for sure. I understand that. From Moto3 to MotoGP is a big step, but Darren proved that it can be done. And these guys are good. The Moto3 riders are really, really good to be doing what they're doing at the young age, and like as you said, the racecraft that they show. Scott Ogden, Johan Brits, I agree. Scott Ogden's got a little bit to him. He just needs to get a better package underneath him. There's a couple of names in there, and as you said, Paul, you could literally just pull a name out of a hat there. And Colin Via, I know you said last week, Colin Via and Brian Richards just said he's week in and week out. So there's a lot of riders. There's a lot of talent coming from there. So MotoGP is in very good hands. I think it's safe to say.
And then just funnily enough, Moto2, you got a one-make formula, and yet we don't see the close racing that we see in Moto3 or MotoGP, funnily enough. So, I mean, more often than not, we're seeing one with about a 1.5 2-second gap between the first 6 or 7. I wonder why that could be. I don't know. It just seems that as much as it should be a very balanced formula, because everything's the same, maybe it is now rider talent is coming to the top and the fastest guys are winning consistently. I'm not too sure, but funnily enough, you very seldom see 4 or 5 of them racing for a first place. Might be further down in the field, but definitely those top 5 or 6 there's a second gap between each of them. And shame, poor Aaron Canet, 14 second places. This guy, does he deserve to win a race? I don't know. Part of me I want him to win one, but then he always gets beaten. So you think to yourself, does he deserve it? I don't know. Shame, the poor guy. He just can't cut a break. Maybe next year when Pedro moves out.
Yeah, it's a hard case there. Christopher, I hear your argument with Guevara in Moto2 just not shining, and a lot of Moto3 riders have gone there. Foggia,
Foggia,
yeah, a couple of riders have gone there. So I think it's more a case of that triumph. I raced successfully a triumph in South Africa, and I got on with a triple cylinder and hard worked. You ride it differently to a screamer, and it's a different way of riding a motorcycle that some do well on and some battle on. So I think it is the triumph and how it delivers the power and how you've got to understand the gear ratios and how it all works. Remember, there's no traction control, there's no wheelie control, there's no electronics, so it's very much old school in many ways. So yeah, it's a strange formula that some people either get along with or they just don't. So but that's a conversation for another day, and it's one that we can have certainly at the end of the season, potentially throw in a Simon Crayfall and get his insight on that. But for this week's show, thank you so much to everyone for joining in. Really appreciate it again. Have a great week further, and we'll catch up with you next week, Tuesday, where we will talk what I am 100% sure is going to be a very, very exciting and dramatic. I think there's a lot of spanners in the works still to be thrown in this MotoGP championship coming. So until next week, Tuesday, stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll join you then. Paul, thank you so much once again. Thank you to everyone, and see you in a week's time.
Only a pleasure. Thanks, Rob. Good night, everyone. Cheers.